Are you curious to understand what's happening in the Louisville area housing market here as the spring market settles in? Well, I'm Emily Price and I'm with the Price Group at Keller Williams Realty Louisville East, and today I'm going to be walking you through a couple of key points to keep in mind so that you better understand the real estate trends here in the Louisville, Kentucky housing market. First up, let's talk about the absorption rate. Well, what is the absorption rate? Well, the absorption rate is a measurement to let us know if we're in a seller's market, a buyer's market, or what we might call a stable or a balanced market. So the absorption rate looks at the number of properties that we have sold in a certain amount of time in comparison to the number of properties that we have currently available. And it assumes this fact: if no other properties were to come for sale on the market and the buyers continued at the pace that they're moving, if that trend line stayed the same, just how many months would it take for us to sell all of the property that is currently available in the market? Well, in the Louisville market right now, here in the spring of 2025, we are sitting at an absorption rate of 1.96 months, meaning, again, if no new property came to market and the buyers kept buying at the pace that they're currently buying at, it would take us 2 months to sell everything. Now, well, you got to look at that and think about, well, what was happening 4 weeks ago? At 4 weeks ago, we were just a notch higher than that. We were sitting at 2.29 months of inventory. And if you rewind that back and you say, well, Emily, give me the context of what was happening at the start of 2025, we were at a notch higher than that at 2.81 months. Now, this time last year, in the spring of 2024, we were right at about the same at 1.83 months. And when it comes to an absorption rate in the Louisville, Kentucky housing market. So what exactly does that mean? Well, when your absorption rate sits at under 5 months, you're in what's considered a seller's market. When your absorption rate sits between that 5 and 6 month mark, you're in what is considered a balanced market or a stable market. But don't get too excited, because that market never lasts for too long. And then when you crest that more than 6 month mark, that's when you know that you're in the buyer's market. So what does all of this mean? It means that Louisville remains in a seller's market, which again is defined by an absorption rate of less than 5 months. As we're looking at market trends, another key indicator that we always want to take a look at is what the average sold price is in the market. So when we're looking at the Louisville housing market, if you look at all the homes that have sold in this month here that we are in, walking into May of 2025, and we look at what that average sales price is as of today, it's $328,554. Now, if you were to rewind that back just 4 weeks ago, we were a little above that, a little over $331,000. Now, if you looked at the start of 2025, at the start of this year, we were a little above that at $361. However, when you rewind it back to this time last year, in the spring of 24, we were still a little ahead of where we are right now, but we were a little under where we started 25. And this time last year, we were at 344. So what does this mean? It means that the spring has brought about a small decrease to pricing, yet overall, home prices are holding steady. If you're studying how the market is behaving, what that market is trending at, you also want to pay attention to the number of properties that are currently available for purchase. So this is looking at the inventory. If I was a buyer and I was walking into the market today, how many homes would I have to choose from, right? We all love choice. So when we look at the Louisville housing market, here's where we are. As of today, here at the top of May of 2025, we have 2,370 homes for sale on the market. These are homes that are actively for sale. They are not under contract. They are not waiting to close. They are looking for their buyer. So what does that mean? Well, 4 weeks ago, the number was just a little bit less. We were a little above 2,200. Now, if you rewind to the start of the year, we were a little higher actually than what we are right now. And we kicked off 25 with 2,400 homes for sale on the market. Now, again, today we're sitting right at 2,370. And if we rewind that back to this time last year, when we look at the spring of 24 as it compares to the spring of 25, Well, this time last year, we were considerably under the number of where we are right now. This time last year, we had 1,843 homes for sale in the market, meaning we had an inventory of just a little over 1,800 properties. So what does this mean for today's market? Well, it means that there are simply more choices for buyers here in 2025 than this time last year. In fact, when you compare this time this year to this time last year, we have a 29% increase of homes for buyers to choose from. As we're studying market trends in our housing market of Louisville, Kentucky, we also want to look at the average days on market for sold properties. And you're like, well, what does that mean, Emily? Let me explain to you. So we measure the amount of time it takes between a home going for sale, meaning there's a for sale sign in the yard, it's likely listed on the MLS, to the time that it says that the seller says offer accepted and we're now under contract. So that's the days on market count that we're looking at. So how long does it take to go from for sale to under contract? Well, today, when you look at all of the homes that have sold, that have gone all the way across the finish line to the closing table, today here in early May of 25, we know that in the greater Louisville area, it's taking about 59 days to go from for sale to under contract. So right at 2 months. Now, 4 weeks ago, it was taking just a little bit less at 56 days, so just a difference of 3 days. And at the start of the year, yet again, it was still taking a little bit less at 52 days. So 52 days at the start of 25 to 59 days here in May of 25, about 5 months later. And then this time last year, it was still taking a little fewer days. So this time last year, it was taking 43 days for all homes that sold. 43 days was the average amount of time that those homes that sold went from for sale to under contract. So what does it mean? It means that the days on market are trending slightly up, meaning it's taking a bit more time for sellers to sell their home by about 2 more weeks than it did this time last year. And if we're looking at trends in the housing market, we would be amiss if we didn't also look at the trend of what those interest rates are doing, right? An interest rate is the cost of borrowing money. So the interest rate affects the mortgage when a buyer gets a mortgage to purchase their home with. So let's take a look to see what those interest rates are doing. So what we're looking at is we're looking at the 30-year mortgage rate average across the country. And we're also going to look at the 15-year mortgage rate average across the country. So today, here we are in May of 2025, the 30-year is 6.88%. and the 15-year is 6.21%. Now, I'm gonna pause there because before I go on, it's important to share a really valuable piece of information with you. And that is, if you look at the history of interest rates in our country of the United States of America for the past 50 years, for the past 5 decades, and you look at the average rate of the 30-year mortgage rate, you will find that the average 30-year mortgage rate of the last 50 years in our country is, drum roll, do you have any guesses? 7.1% is the average, okay? So what's powerful about today is that we are under the average at 6.88%, again for the 30-year rate. Now, 4 weeks ago, where were we? We were about exactly the same. We were at 6.82% for a 30-year, and we were at 6.2% for a 15. Now, how about in comparison to the start of 2025? Well, guess what? Good news here. The interest rates have improved since the start of the year. We went into 2025 seeing a 7.17% average rate for the 30-year and a 6.5 average rate for the 15. Again, in comparison to where we are today at 6.88 and 6.21 respectively. Now, this time last year, right? How does that interest rate, the cost of borrowing money, compare to what it was this time last year? And I've got yet another bit of good news for you. It's better. This time last year, in the spring of 24, we were sitting at a 7.19 30-year rate and a 6.64 average 15-year rate. So what does all this mean? It means that rates have decreased slightly since the start of the year. However, the good news is that the rates seem to be stable. Stable often feels quite safe. They've been about the same place, give or take a couple tenths of a point for the last 12 months. And the important thing to remember is that the average rate of the 50-year history of our country for a 30-year mortgage rate is 7.1. So anytime you see the rate around the 7, you know you're hitting right around the average, and anytime it's under 7.1, you know you're winning because you're below that average. If you found the information that I shared with you here today helpful and informative as it pertains to the market trends in the Louisville, Kentucky housing market, go ahead and hit subscribe right now so that you can follow along with us here at The Price Group. We pledge to you to be your #1 real estate resource, and each month we'll be sure to bring to you the latest hot off the presses numbers and facts as it pertains to the Louisville, Kentucky housing market and just how those trends are trending and what it means to you.